Continuing our story, we have Namor and Namora both in the war room conversating about this goal to achieve this absolute power. And Namora cannot wait to finally have all this power, to have their dream of wiping out the surface. And Namor says, and with the kaiju at their disposal, with their new army on top of it, they'll be unstoppable. But Namora notes, will they all follow? Will they comply? And just as they're about to reach that conclusion, Sute walks in and tells them that Neytiri and the Outsider have left. We would then see Zilla and Neytiri, well, Zilla with Neytiri riding on top of them, pretty much running through, I would have to say, the area where we see Kong running in the Hollow Earth. And they stop, I would have to say, midway, with Neytiri noting that they are now thousands, and they mean thousands of miles from the city. They're really outside of their own territory. This is when Zilla turns into his human form and catches her as she falls, to which Neytiri states, was that really necessary? And Zilla promptly says he really didn't think about it. But this is when Neytiri tells him about Namor, because now Zilla's curious. Why is he like this? What does he want? Neytiri talks about Namor's ruthlessness against the surface world when he got older. But how did that all start? Well, it happened during, well, I guess you could honestly say the caveman periods, or at least the Neanderthal age, where Talokans and the Na'vi were pretty much prehistoric at the time. Namor's intelligence grew as his mutant powers began to flourish, and they began to, show more. Namor eventually was able to colonize all three, his own people on top of it. But he wanted more. He wanted the world. Now, during this time, we then see, well, let's fast forward, let's say an hour later, and we have Namora, Atuma, and two other Atlantean guards riding on war bats, tracking down Neytiri and Zilla. This is when we cut over back to the civilization of the Metakai clan, or at least the Water Tribe. Namor arrives and he sees Atukan and Toneri, both the leaders of their respective Na'vi tribes, talking at this time. Namor demands them to come forward, come front and center, if you will. And Toneri and Atukan are both cautious, as are their wives, who pretty much, I think it was Ronoa or Rono. Rono pretty much shields both her daughter and her son from them. And this is when he asks them, do they know anything of Neytiri's betrayal? Toneri states no, and so does Atukan. No. But Namor's not really convinced. And this is when he actually backhands Atukan into the ground. Like literally just smack. And he tells them again, or at least he asks them again, apologies, do you know of her betrayal? And this is when Renoa says, if they knew, they would have told you right away. And Namor addresses her, telling her he didn't ask her to speak. He asked their leaders to speak. Showing that little bit of, I guess you could say, misogynistic way of Namor. Because, dude is a little bit misogynistic in the comics, And Renoa holds her ground despite the others' protests, but they ready their spears just in case. And Namor then tells her, if he suspects betrayal of Neytiri, then he'll burn this entire village and the others to the ground. Back in the Hollow Earth, in the Hollow Earth jungle, Neytiri actually spots Kong. Yes, this is Kong here, and this actually takes place, well, I guess you could say after the events of Godzilla vs. Kong. Kong is more or less by himself at this time, and he still wields the Godzilla axe, just not charged by the atomic breath as well. Turning into his beast form, Zilla and Kong size each other up for a little bit. Actually, standing around each other, tiptoeing around, sizing each other up, like predators do. But it's different. They start communicating with each other. And Kong tells him of a temple he's learned about, a temple that the humans have learned about as well. And it's the Temple of Shimu, a temple of pretty much not just any Titan, but the founding father Titan, the first Titan. Kong and, well, Zilla pretty much invites Kong on this journey as they would need his help. We then go to the surface, and I mean the surface. Planet Earth, our world. And we actually see Godzilla handling business. The king of monsters in his natural element, going around handling the Titans, making sure there are no longer any rivalry disputes. However, with his new senses, he senses something off, like the balance of nature is about to shift. We then go to the Temple of Shimu, or at least the Arctic Temple. It's in a colder area of the Hollow Earth, not too barren or not too Antarctic, or at least not, pretty much not Antarctic-like, but it's cold, noticeably cold. We then see Kong, Zilla, and Neytiri pretty much at the temple. And this is when Neytiri and Zilla in his human form both walk in while Kong remains outside to guard. He was informed that they would be getting company pretty soon. The hostile kind, anyway. And this is when Zilla sees it all. Shimu in its glory. The Titan war that happened so long ago. He sees it. Not only sees it, but he envisions it. But his visions are cut off when he senses a spear being thrown at him, and he immediately catches it right before it hits Neytiri. It's obviously Namor and the rest of the group. Kong is outside handling the war bats like he usually does. Pretty much like in, Godzilla vs. Kong. He doing this thing. He slams one, kills him in the same way. Basically, it's the same fight scene, except let's say it's a little bit longer because these war bats are actually trained up. So he's actually struggling to kill them a little bit. Okay. So, they are trained up because they're meant to be war mounts. So, yeah. Back in the temple, we have Attuma pretty much telling them that they're traitors, and Neytiri draws her bow, saying that Namor is actually the traitor, wanting this power for himself, or basically wanting to have his own deeds, or basically wanting to fulfill his own purpose. And this is when Zilla notes that this power doesn't belong to them, doesn't belong to any of them. It only belongs to the direct descendant of Shimu. Neytiri and Namor actually size each other up while Zilla continues to try to reason with Attuma, hoping that he's reasonable. However, Attuma simply draws his spear, ready for a fight, and he's actually been stating he's been hoping to kill him since he embarrassed their king. To which Zilla replies, "I wasn't trying." Into which Attuma tries to call his bluff, but Zilla actually moves. Okay, it's bad. It's really bad. It's just super bad here, with Zilla simply embarrassing Attuma here. He straight up just dog walks him. Like, even worse, I would have to say it's even worse than the Namor. Meanwhile, while Namor and Neytiri's fight plays out, Neytiri actually hits her with these arrows. Now, these arrows are dipped in the toxins of warbats. Yes, warbats are actually venomous, and they actually have a paralyzing, effect to them. But before she can finally get the finishing blow, Namor throws his spear and almost hits her. Like, it goes past her face and gives her a little bit of a cut on her cheek. And Neytiri immediately retreats right behind Zilla. Zilla then addresses Namor, and the two pretty much are at odds here, with Namor addressing Zilla and everything. We then see Kong tumble through the temple. He's actually thrown through it. He tumbles himself and gets back up, and we actually see it was from Godzilla. He's pissed off more than usual, aggressive, more angrier, and much more, just not willing to listen to reason, as this is a Titan whose power actually exceeds his own. And Namor notes this. He explains this in detail on how Titan shouldn't be here. And this is when we see Zilla pretty much run at Namor's kaiju form and tries to snap at him, but he's intercepted by Godzilla himself, pretty much getting a tail slap right into a pillar. And Neytiri notes, you knew this would happen. You knew he'd come here. And this is what Namor says, yes. The king always responds to those who try to mess with the natural balance. Neytiri, now realizing what's been happening, realizing that they've been played for a fool, tells Zilla to look out as an atomic breath almost hits him. As he, it's kind of like as he gets up and regains consciousness, he pretty much just, dodges it. Realizing that he's going to have no other choice but to actually fight Godzilla here, he sizes him up. They size each other up and they run at each other. And they begin into this deadly combat of claws, jaws, and blasts, with Zilla actually using his agility and maneuverability to move around Godzilla and actually dodging hits, not taking any chances. He then slits Godzilla's throat with his scoots and pretty much tries to pin him to the ground, but Godzilla throws him off. Zilla then uses this time to use a backflip and then sprays him with the atomic fire. Godzilla then launches his atomic breath, only for it to be dodged this time, but it's able to rip off a couple scoots so that doesn't happen again. A pissed off Godzilla then lets out atomic breath after atomic breath, kind of like he did in his fight against Kong. However, Zilla is far too fast, he's far too maneuverable, and he begins to use another ability, his burrowing ability. This is when he digs, collapsing the ground underneath Godzilla, causing him to buckle to his knees. He then comes up spraying him, and I mean he hits him with the full force of his atomic fire, and this overwhelms Godzilla, who's now in a much more defenseless position, and this knocks him completely out. A little bit tired and a little bit exhausted from that, Zilla turns into his human form and runs after pretty much Neytiri and Namor. But unfortunately, they're too late. Namor opens the tomb door and takes the power, the full force of Shimu. He absorbs the Titan's essence. He absorbs its power into him. And Zilla tells him, this power was not meant for you. You shouldn't have done this. However, Namor doesn't care. He says he finally gets what he wants. He can get the world he always dreamed of. And Zilla notes to him, what about your people? What about the clans, the Talokans? But Namor says, oh, they'll be there. Whether they live or die, it doesn't matter to him. And this is when his body begins to glow as he raises his spear into the air. With quick thinking, Zilla turns into his beast form and pretty much grabs and throws Neytiri into Kong's hands and tells Kong to run. Kong runs as fast as he can while Neytiri shouts no, and Zilla tries to charge at Namor before he can get it. And he's so close to getting it. And Neytiri looks in horror as a white explosion engulfs the entire temple. Kong and her are able to make it out, and they see Namor flying over pretty much the debris of this entire temple. And using the power of Shimu, the founding father, the first Titan, he tells him to rise. And Godzilla rises up with white eyes, signaling the full control of Namor. And that's where we're going to leave it off here, you guys. Please comment down below, like and subscribe and share with your friends. What's Namor going to do to the surface world? And now that he's Godzilla, now that he has Godzilla, what's he going to do? See you guys for the next chapter. Peace.